So we are here with Chowaniec, an artist based in Bushwick, Brooklyn. And we're in her studio right now, which is awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for being here.
So let's just go ahead and start off. You've done a lot of art in several different mediums, and some very overtly political, like this and the raw/war. I'm curious, how do you see your art fitting into activism, or do you feel like your art sometimes touches upon activism? Do you try to make it political? How's your workflow in that sense?
All of the work is about engaging someone in a dialogue, opening up questions, taking the time to be present to the work and understand that you're implicated in the environment around you.
So it's sort of the introspective form of activism, because activism in my mind is being aware. It's an active awareness of the world around you and of course yourself. So your art sort of takes the stance of being aware of yourself in this space, either socially or politically or even on a basal level.
Very much so, and I think in terms of other media that I've engaged with, I had the great pleasure and privilege of working as Lynn Hirschman-Leeson's producer on Women Art Revolution, which was a film that was launched in 2010 and is very critical in terms of dealing with the feminist art movement and secret histories. And I think that those secret histories and cultural histories, once again, intersect all of my work, and with the Matryoshka dolls in particular, it's once again thinking of those critical lessons from the feminist art movement, which are all about asking questions, not shutting them down, interrogating, informing oneself, creating awareness. And so for this series in particular, that was a very overt engagement of the cultural histories, particularly Russian cultural histories. They are the non-traditional Matryoshka dolls,
which I love. It's the slamming together of non-traditional and traditional. And talking about the dolls, you say, I read on your site that it said that you wanted to question what traditional means and how that leads to the formation of cultural history. So speaking of outside of Russia, but in the U.S., how do you see artwork in the U.S. that's happening now, or it has happened, creating the history and narrative? And what do you see artists such as yourself or other artists doing to create that narrative and thereby pushing for socio-political change?
That is a very loaded question.
I
know. And very complex, many different parts. I think the thing that I would want to speak to in terms of what's going on now, I mean, first of all, I think it's important to always say history is plural, because there are simultaneous histories happening. You have to look at who's creating those histories, the formation of the histories themselves, and once again, asking questions about, who's making these decisions, what gets left in, what gets left out. And I think that also to understand the simultaneity of those histories, because I think that when you have artists who are engaging in a political dialogue, one hopes that the audience is informed or becomes informed, and that degree of intellect, that degree of engagement, I think, necessarily means that you're going to have diverging views. You're going to have conflict even on the informed, engaged side. And I think that we just have to remember that if we want to create change, if we want to fight against the critical issues that are in our cultural landscape at the moment, we need to be comfortable, I guess, with finding a way to support each other and not to be constantly fracturing within our community. I think that's really critical.
Talking about the dolls, how did you choose the characters?
It's very important, I think, if one is going to talk about affecting history, to think of who's included. So it was critical for me to have a strong female presence. And then it was really about a reaching back through different generations. I mean, it starts quite early and right up to the present. So it was a conscious timeline and chronology. And also I wanted people that perhaps people would recognize.
Yeah.
So Gogol, Tchaikovsky, Alan Asimova, Ivan the Terrible, Pussy Riot, as the
Yes.
encapsulating activism
Yeah.
element.
Yeah, I love those. In regards to your drawings, you said, it's written on your site that you want to engage the viewer in the act of looking as thinking, and see drawing as a personal and a political act. Talk a little bit more about that philosophy.
Well, I think that at this moment in time, in terms of visual culture, we're so saturated with visual images, and I think that that's a fight about how we engage and receive information. And I think every day when we're sharing articles dealing with activism and so many images, there's just so much to take in, and so the idea of creating a large-scale drawing and asking somebody to stand in front of it and is a difficult thing at this moment in time. So I do consider it political to invite somebody into that space of the work and to project themselves, hopefully to see the drawing as an extension of their own body and their own memory, and in that understand again that interconnectedness and that those implications and that accountability in all of the decisions that we make. My goal is to communicate and to bring. I mean, it's a crazy thing to say, but to bring people to greater awareness, because I think that whatever it is that you're taking up and that you are banding together to create change, that has to come from a deep awareness of self and others.
Fantastic. So, last question. I know you were saying earlier that you feel it's your responsibility to comment on these issues. What would you say to an artist or even somebody who's not necessarily creative in this sense, that just says, "Well, I'm not really political, so it's not, you don't see it in how I live or what I do." What would you say to them?
I'd say two things. One, we are all implicated. And two, quite simply, inform, ask questions, and support. Because I think, again, small decisions that you make in your everyday life about how you engage with people, where you buy things, where you source your information, how you live in this world is inherently political.